Less than a week from the devastation of Hurricane Irma, Northeast Florida and all the state begins rebuilding.
I came down to see FEMA, to see the Coast Guard, to see the Army, the Marines, everybody, the Navy. The job that everybody has done is incredible.
The president on the ground to survey damage, the governor in the air to see what our area is dealing with, and leaders willing to cast praise across party lines to see Florida rebuilt.
The governor and the president are very good friends. And because they're a very good friend, we certainly hope that it's going to spearhead the relief that we need here in this county and throughout the state.
Our conversations on recovering after Irma on This Week in Jacksonville. And welcome to This Week in Jacksonville. For the first time in 2 weeks, last Sunday at this time, most of us were making those last-minute checks to make sure that we were prepared for whatever Mother Nature would bring. And then Hurricane Irma arrived and knocked so many of us sideways. Joining us this morning for this segment, Christian Smith from the American Red Cross. We've gotten to know each other well in the last week because you're always here at our station. You're helping us understand what is going on with disaster relief. So many stories in this last week of need and so many stories of volunteers making a difference. What stands out to you and what's happened in this last week?
Well, I think that just the fact that these individuals leave their homes,
right.
They leave their families, they prepare their families, they prepare their homes, and then they come into a sheltering environment. And then they stay in those shelters with people that they don't know, and they live there, they eat there, they sleep there. So as long as I've been doing this, I'm always in awe of the volunteers and the fact that they will make those kind of sacrifices, because only very special people do things like that. You probably can't really even pay very many people to do that kind of work. So that's the thing that's I'm so fascinated with. And of course, then immediately after the storm, those individuals that when we bring in new volunteers or we rotate people, is watching those volunteers that go back home when they have extensive damage. So they are part of the community, they are living it, and they are experiencing the same loss and the same thing that everyone else in that shelter is.
So there's a small number of folks who are on the Red Cross payroll. And then the other folks who come in a disaster, those are all volunteer
All
hours?
volunteers. All volunteers. We have a very, very, very tiny, small professional staff. I think in Jacksonville, Northeast Florida, we have like 14. I mean, it's tiny. So hundreds and hundreds of volunteers are in the process right now and have been working since the storm, before the storm, because as you know, we set up once each county makes the decision that they're going to open shelters, especially like in Duval County, then we come in, and then the Red Cross volunteers are then running those shelters and manning those shelters, and then making sure that people are provided with the best comfort and care that we can, you know, despite the fact that we're in the middle of a huge disaster.
Yeah, I want to show some video here. Governor Scott spent some time in every corner of the state this past week, including time here in Northeast Florida, both Tuesday and Thursday. And here, he had invited me to fly with him aboard a National Guard Black Hawk, and we spent time discussing Irma's impact. Governor Scott made sure to mention both the Red Cross and the National Guard.
But they're very appreciative. They're very appreciative of the National Guard, American Red Cross, Salvation Army, all these groups. And unfortunately, it looks like people listened, which is really, really, really good. I think all the news media did a good job of getting the message out that this was a massive storm that could be deadly if you didn't take it seriously.
How do you feel about a couple of those things? Do you feel like people adequately prepared, took it seriously? Because Governor Scott was kind of out in front on this a week before the storm arrived. He's saying we've got to take it seriously.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that it's evident by the way that people responded. I think it's evident the way people came into the shelters. I think that as we see more and more people returning to their homes, and then the damage from their homes, the decision not to have stayed. So you hear more and more of that. There's still, you know, those groups of individuals that did stay, and I don't think they will next time. But so that it's a learning experience every time. But I think we all felt much better this time, and especially after with Matthew and some of the people that didn't feel like that they had experienced so much. So this was a very scary situation. I think we were encouraged that they heeded those evacuation warnings.
FEMA issued a statement this week saying 120 government and Red Cross shelters are open across the affected areas. That was 4 days after the hurricane.
Yeah.
So maybe explain to me, how long does Red Cross stay active and provide assistance with disaster relief like this?
Can I go back to one thing about Governor Scott?
Yeah.
Governor Scott came to one of our shelters right here in Jacksonville, and him and Tim Tebow came together. And let me tell you, that man touched every single person in that shelter, the workers and the volunteers and even the police. So they made sure, both of them together, touched every single person. They hugged them, they talked to them. They were there for a couple of hours. And so I was so impressed with his leadership and the way in which he did. And of course, having Tim Tebow there was pretty exciting, obviously. But the governor it was just amazing. And so we were honored to have him there. But it was really fascinating the way he took care of and talking to every single resident in the shelter. I mean, the Red Cross volunteers were just like, wow, this was impressive. So I did not want to take that moment to share that.
Right, yeah. You mentioned something about National Guard as well, when you went to a shelter locally and not knowing who you are, that you were with Red Cross. How did they greet you?
I walked up and, welcome, ma'am. And I was like, well, thank you. So, I mean, I felt welcomed, and they didn't know me. I didn't know them, but the National Guard was the first people that we saw when you were coming into almost all of the Red Cross shelters. So it was absolutely, it was very cool, and it was very, they were very warm and they were very welcoming, but it was like they were part of us.
Yeah. I had heard a story when we went to a Red Cross shelter down in St. Augustine at the end of the week, but somebody said, hey, I was in Jacksonville at this particular shelter, and you should have seen it when the storm was going on. About 4 gentlemen from the Guard, a woman from the Guard, carrying babies.
Holding them, rocking
babies. Just adding another layer of, we're here to make sure you're taken care of.
Yeah, and it's a comfort and care that, you know, you don't fully appreciate until you're in that environment. So the Red Cross volunteers, I mean, they're amazing people. They truly are. I mean, I cannot ever say enough about them and the work they do.
So it's tough, isn't it? Being in a shelter is different. You were explaining to me, it's different than getting in the truck and going out and delivering some meals over there. You can't really do that until the shelters are closed, right?
Yeah, because the whole point of having shelters open is for people that have experienced damage to their home and they can't go back into their home, or for people that candidly don't have a home to go back into. So Red Cross continues to have shelters open for those members of the community that have nowhere else to go. And so when we then start going into the neighborhoods and distributing the meals and the snacks and water and things like that, which we've started that process, but for us, we continue with the sheltering and feeding because that's our first goal, is making sure that people have a place to stay. And then as we transition into alternative housing and things that for them, as they find different situations to go back into. But for now, the shelter is their home.
Yeah. So many people affected in Northeast Florida when we didn't necessarily expect that we're going to be dealing with the kind of flooding that came. And throughout the week, it seemed like every day we'd find a different pocket of our area, a different county, a different community that was dealing with dealing with flooding like you're seeing in this video. Black Creek, for instance. St. Augustine's Davis Shores, you know, last year during Hurricane Matthew was so impacted by that. Well, now it's Crescent Beach with a tornado, or it's other places. This was something where everybody really had to step up and prepare for the unexpected, because who would expect an EF2 like we're seeing in this flyover video here? It's just so many homes damaged, destroyed, docks destroyed. At one point, our helicopter flying over the area had spotted a boat that had been thrown into a neighborhood from out in the river and all of that. So
we had someone's dock in our backyard. So
in your backyard?
Yeah, well, not the whole dock, but parts of it.
Parts of it.
Yeah, so it travels quickly, it travels and it goes far. It can definitely do that. But you're absolutely right that lots of families and lots of people, you know, there are still homes in areas that are not accessible. And so for those families, whether you have damage to your roof or you have damage to your home, or if you've lost your home, it's a different kind of situation. And if you're staying in a shelter, that's a very difficult time. It's difficult to do that, and it's a difficult place because you don't always know what's going to happen when you go back home.
Yeah. Well, hats off to all the volunteers.
Yeah,
thank you so much for what the Red Cross does, and I know it continues to make a difference even as we move more than a week out from what happened here with Hurricane Irma. Thank you so much,
Well, thank
Christian.
you for helping us to get those messages and the words out.
Yeah. All right, so coming up, 11 members of Congress have a very specific message for Governor Rick Scott related to Hurricane Irma. One of Jacksonville's U.S. representatives next on This Week in Jacksonville.
The Infiniti QX60. Impressive performance and seating for 7. Lease the Infiniti QX60 for $399 a month. Visit your local Infinity retailer.
I'm Robert Palmer, president of RP Funding and owner of the Jacksonville Armada. Interest rates have unexpectedly dropped, creating an opportunity to lower your monthly mortgage payment. You can take advantage of this huge potential savings by refinancing with RP Funding, and as always, I'll pay all your closing costs. I've paid over $20 million in closing costs for homeowners just like you. So now, let me pay yours. Go to rpfunding.com or call today. Go Armada.
Nissan Titan. You can drive a truck, or you can team up with one. Bring along an extra set of eyes with trailer hitch guide and some extra muscle with 555 pound-feet of torque. Take on today in the Nissan family of Titans, featuring America's best truck warranty. 5 years, 100,000 miles, bumper to bumper. With Nissan's Hurricane Relief Program, get employee pricing plus no payments for 6 months.
It's the flooring sale you've been waiting for. Empire Today's half-price sale. Get $2,400 of flooring for $1,200, $5,200 for an amazing $2,600. That's half the price of your entire purchase. Shop for carpet, hardwood, tile, vinyl, and laminate right from home and have it professionally installed. Don't miss Empire's half-price sale. Schedule now.
800-588-2300 Empire.
Today. This is the J.D. Power Award for dependability. I want you to give it to the friend that is most dependable.
Oh! Is this required? Does she have to?
She doesn't have to. Tough choice, isn't it?
Yes.
Well, luckily, Chevy makes it a little easier because it's the only brand to earn J.D. Power Dependability Awards for cars, trucks, and SUVs 2 years in a row.
Wow, it's really nice in here.
Get 20% below MSRP on most 2017 Chevy Malibu models. That's over $5,300 on this Chevy Malibu. Find new roads at your local Chevy dealer.
We are First Coast Strong.
Enjoy your feast.
It's been wonderful having a home-cooked meal. Pork sandwich, good choice.
I got you. 1, 2, 3.
But you made it, and your house is still standing.
I'm glad you guys got through it all. I know it was scary.
I love Jennifer News. Hello.
It's a blessing. It makes you feel so good on the inside.
You're watching This Week in Jacksonville with Kent Justice.
Yeah, we've shown you damage throughout Florida and certainly across our viewing area here in northeast Florida into southeast Georgia. Congressman Al Lawson met with me here at our station this week on the same day that he spent hours in his Jacksonville district, and he pointed out the great needs he saw and the ways he hopes to solve some of the problems.
There's some areas it's really devastating when water was about waist high. Going into some of the houses today, all of their furniture is gone, all of things that they have there for their kids, clothing is gone, it's devastation, and so we have to make sure that the federal government, FEMA, responds and give them a place to stay. They're staying in hotels and different places and coming back in with a little hope that they can recover some things, you know.
You mentioned that Mayor Curry had talked to you. What's his request to you in terms of taking the message back to Capitol Hill?
Well, Mayor wanted me to carry the message back that there's about $26 million or so that they haven't got from the last Hurricane Matthews. Yeah. And that is critically important because in this recover area to be able to move the debris and stuff that we have here, you know, that's a big strain on the city budget. And so we need to make sure they get that money as well as the coordination with the new dollars that are going to come down from FEMA when the assessment is actually done on what is needed, what the cost is going to be.
Saw a letter from you this week about food security. What's the effort there? You're asking Governor Scott to step in, right?
Well, I'm asking to step in because food security is very important, especially the family with kids, you know, who are getting ready to go back to school. And what I'm asking them to do is to make sure that the kids who are on free and reduced lunch, that they get breakfast and lunch, but they open up to everyone because the other people, you know, might not need it a long time, but they need it for their kids because they really don't have it. And then at the same time, with WIC funding, when mothers have lost all of the things that they need with their kids and stuff, that we extend that so they can go in and get other things such as diapers and food formula and stuff like that that they need for the kids. And then hot meals are extremely important. You know, and we don't want people to get turned back on food stamps that really go in to try to get a hot meal because a hot meal is needed. And we would need to extend the benefits. Normally benefits for SNAP comes in at the end of the month, but we want to step that up so they get SNAP benefits right now. And so those are some of the things that we learned from other hurricanes that is extremely important. Food necessity is extremely important. And I was at the food bank today, you know, helping them put together packages for people, which was there with UPS and some other people, which was really great. So the 2 hours I spent there, you know that you're doing something that's going to help people.
Yeah. So we saw President Trump come to Florida to assess damage. Most of that was looking at what happened in the west side of Florida and that coast. Here on the East Coast, Northeast Florida, you said that you're hearing from people that we may have got it as bad here as some of the other parts of the state.
Yeah, it is predicted that Key West and Duval really got it worse than any other place in the state. Even though food assistance and emergency funding have been requested for other areas, they have not understood the impact that it had on Duval.
Yeah. Flooding damage, is that the primary thing you see when you're talking about Ribault and what have you?
Flooding damage, a lot of trees are down that crush cars and homes and so forth. All of that debris has got to be removed. It wasn't expected to come here. You know, expected that it might hit Tampa, but, you know, meteorologists were not able to give a great prediction on what human nature was going to do. And so that's why we are here. And so all of my colleagues who left D.C. today are down. Some of them are down with the president. And several of us will be together next week. We hope to be able to get the Speaker of the House to come down, and so they know the importance of when these funds need to be released.
Yeah, and what would it do having the Speaker of the House a week after having the president here? What would that do in order to try and coordinate efforts to get relief?
Well, you know, I really have to give credit to the mayor here, because the mayor's done an excellent job of really being out in the field. He's out in the field again today, rescuing people. And the governor of the state of Florida, you know, I have to also give him credit, because he was way ahead of this storm, you know, trying to really make things happen. And so the governor and the president are very good friends. And because they're very good friends, we certainly hope that it's going to spearhead the relief that we need here in this county and throughout the state.
Congressman Al Lawson from Jacksonville. Congressman Ted Yoho from Gainesville clapping his hands as FEMA awarded a major disaster declaration in Alachua, Bradford, and Union counties, as well as many other places throughout Florida. Rep. Yoho said, "Being able to provide our communities with every tool available is my goal, and I am proud of our team for the rapid response. And now we can ensure that every citizen in our district can begin the rebuilding and the recovery process." Energy and technology, two key components of recovery after Irma. Our next guests are experts, so stay with us for more on This Week in Jacksonville.
Let's set the record straight. Dick Gore's RV World is Jacksonville's oldest locally owned and operated hometown RV dealer, period. Serving Jacksonville's RV needs for over 35 years. Stop by and see us just off the airport exit, or click on dickgoresrvworld.com.
Level up with the brand new Nissan Rogue Sport with automatic emergency braking that could stop for you, intelligent all-wheel drive, and around view monitor. Wow. Take on today the brand new Nissan Rogue Sport, part of the Rogue family. Lease today starting at just $159 per month, or save up to $10,760 on select models.
I'm George Nicara. I spent, out of my first 7 or 8 years in the Coast Guard, I had 5 years at sea. I found out about Navy Mutual from a friend of mine in the Coast Guard, Admiral Jim Loy. There's an absolute correlation between national security and financial security. And Navy Mutual has convinced me and many of my colleagues that they are one of the best alternatives available. Navy Mutual provided the best rates, the best customer service. I want to be able to give my grandchildren the most that's possible. And Navy Mutual is providing that for us.
Gloria always went big. So we helped her plan a memorial service that no one would soon forget. This one's for you, Gloria. Only a Dignity Memorial professional can celebrate a life like no other. Find out how at dignityjacksonville.com.
This is the J.D. Power Award for dependability. I want you to give it to the friend that is most dependable.
Oh! It's this required? Does she have to?
She doesn't have to. Tough choice, isn't it?
Yes.
Well, luckily, Chevy makes it a little easier because it's the only brand to earn J.D. Power Dependability Awards for cars, trucks, and SUVs 2 years in a row.
Wow, it's really nice in here.
Get 20% below MSRP on most 2017 Chevy Malibu models. That's over $5,300 on this Chevy Malibu. See your Southern Chevy dealers.
When we say consultations are free, we mean it. It doesn't cost a thing, regardless of whether you hire us or not. We will take all the time that you need and make sure that you make the right decisions going forward.
Harrow and Harrow. Don't settle for less than you deserve.
The Weather Authority app, taking local to a new level. That means pinpointing storms, road conditions, even lightning strikes down to your precise location. Customize the exact track radar with locations important to you. Unmatched precision and reliability in the palm of your hand. Download or update your app today.
Well, getting homes repaired and power restored, those sound like the top priorities when it comes to disaster relief and what you do after a hurricane like Irma, right? Well, let's talk about a couple specific elements at work after Irma. Kevin Doyle leads Consumer Energy Alliance, a Florida chapter or region, if you will, and Alan Ginder is a member of the Governor Scott's Technology Advisory Council. Alan, let's start with the tech side here. I told you Governor Scott had visited with me and told me, hey, Key West, the damage comprehensive. They don't have any kind of cell signal. The infrastructure's gone. What are the kinds of things that are going on to try and help people recover and support people through this storm?
Well, I'll tell you, Governor Scott, certainly Eric Lawson, the head of AST, have done an amazing job of building infrastructure within the state of Florida to allow for the constituents of the state to be able to get the services that they needed, specifically what Congressman Lawson just spoke about as well, getting food to individuals. And, having to rebuild infrastructure or have infrastructure in place to allow people to have connectivity, any-to-any connectivity, be it cell phones, be it PCs, be it a tablet, any of those things they are doing. So they're doing restorative services right now as quickly as possible, but also what they've been doing for the past 24 months is building redundancy within these networks that will allow for much quicker recovery than we've had in the past.
So maybe explain redundancy, and certainly, Kevin, we're going to talk about, you got to have some things in place even to do that, but redundancy is what? I've got a server backed up. I've got accessibility to the cloud. What does that mean?
So specifically is you have two different aspects of it. So you have large data centers in this instance that support like the Department of Children and Family or Department of Health. One's in Tampa, one's in Tallahassee, and then you have connectivity going to both of those. But then you also using the cloud as a third, a tertiary level, if you will, of redundancy as well. So if those two were to fail, which didn't in this instance, stayed up the whole time so people could get their benefits, they also could go to the cloud as a third level of redundancy to support these folks. So wherever they were, whether they were in Tampa, whether they were in the Keys, Jacksonville, or they had to leave, they could still access the information.
Great point. Or if they had to leave, because there are plenty of people who took that option and said, I'm exiting the state completely until I can get back. As people were exiting the state, we're talking about things like fuel shortages or a need for it. People coming back to the state are going, do I have power? Tell me your thoughts. Consumer Energy Alliance is how you're connected here, but what are your thoughts on what the utility companies, not just the agencies like JEA have done, but everybody involved in trying to keep power or restore power in the last week?
Sure. I mean, JEA, Florida Power and Light, Clay Electric. I mean, you have some real heroes out there doing, a lot of great work and very tough circumstances and tough situations. And usually, too, Kent, when a storm hits Florida, other parts of the state are able to come and help out. But because of the fact the storm hit the entire state, hit Miami, hit Tampa, hit Jacksonville, hit Georgia, hit South Carolina, neighbors that usually neighboring, electricity groups that would come over to help out with repair and restoration weren't able to this time.
They had their own concerns
in their
home state at the time.
Exactly. So obviously our hearts and our prayers and thoughts are with those folks who are suffering right now. And I know there's still folks that are going through stuff. But again, under tough circumstances, electricity companies and the energy providers being able to quickly get fuel to gas stations to safely get folks out of Florida. It was a great orchestrated effort by a lot of folks led by Governor Scott and throughout the state, and to make sure that small businesses and families and constituents here in Florida have what they need to get back home and get their life started again.
Yeah, I had been in touch with the Jacksport, certainly leading up to the storm. Hey, will you close? When will you close? We'll rely on the Coast Guard. But they were very concerned about making sure that they stayed open as long as they could and got reopened as soon as they could in order to get more of those supplies onto the shores here in the East Coast and into Florida.
Definitely. And at the end of the day, it's a good reminder, too, that we need policies that help, put energy infrastructure in place. Right now, most of our fuel has to come via ship. So if we had more pipelines and more abilities to create energy as well, in storms like this, what's already a challenging situation wouldn't be as challenging if we had better access to fuel. But I commend the governor and all the utilities and energy providers for doing a great job and working hard.
So it kind of ties into energy and technology here. I was describing, hey, if some of the connectivity is underground, if you don't have utility towers or wires going across that come down because of trees. As some communities are new and they do that, why isn't that widespread? You said basically it comes down to cost, right?
It does come down to cost. I mean, the cost to bury all those cables, to put all that infrastructure, and I think that's where you're going to start to see more public-private type of relationships so that they can put these cables underground to allow the constituents of the state of Florida to continue to have services. And then in addition to that, companies like Avaya, different folks like that, providing services in the time of need where that they can go out and develop call centers, build these things instantaneously to support the state of Florida and to support these folks getting the services that they need, quite frankly. But it's strictly cost. There's hundreds of millions of dollars in doing that.
So somebody who sat for a week without power is saying it's worth it.
Right.
But it's tough to come up. That's a big nut to crack or what have you in order to get us there, right?
Definitely. And this, too, was a once-in-a-lifetime type storm. I mean, usually, hopefully, knock on wood. And again, hats off to the mayor's office, the governor's office. It's a team effort in getting back in. And thanks to you as well. We watched you and your coverage, seemed like for a week straight.
Right.
And appreciate Channel 4.
I think it was about a week straight. I appreciate you noting that. We've got a great team here. Very proud of everybody pitching in to do that. Alan Ginder, Kevin Doyle, thank you so much. Appreciate your insights and being with us this morning.
Thank you.
So This Week in Jacksonville airs each Sunday morning at this time. I'm Kent Justice. So thanks for watching on air on Channel 4, and you can watch online at newsforjax.com.
Now, more than ever before, more people get their news from News 4 Jax, Jacksonville's #1 source for local news.